Turkey has been waiting at the doorstep of the EU for over 50 years, the longest of any membership applicant. They first applied to join the European Economic Community in 1959 and were recognized as an official candidate country in 1999. Yet after decades of patience, they are no closer to gaining admission. With the acceptance of Sweden and Finland into NATO recently, Turkey's role in the alliance has come under scrutiny. President Erdogan initially blocked their entry, seeking concessions regarding Kurdish militant groups. After negotiations, Turkey lifted its veto, but tensions still remain. This brings up questions about Turkey's own NATO membership and its stalled bid to join the European Union. Will Sweden's admission to NATO pave the way for Turkey's EU accession process to move forward? Or will it cause further complications? Let's take a deep dive into the history and analyze where things currently stand. Background on Turkey-EU relations. Turkey has had a long and turbulent relationship with Europe. The Ottoman Empire engaged in centuries of conflict with European powers. After its dissolution following World War I, the modern Republic of Turkey emerged in 1923 under the leadership of Mustafa Kemal Ataturk. Ataturk initiated a series of political, social and economic reforms aimed at modernizing Turkey along Western lines. This included abolishing the caliphate, banning religious attire, and switching to a modified Latin alphabet. In the decades after World War II, Turkey aligned itself firmly with the West. They joined NATO in 1952 and applied for membership in the European Economic Community, the EU's predecessor, in 1959. The application was rejected, but Turkey maintained close economic ties with Europe. They signed an association agreement with the EEC in 1963 and applied for full membership again in 1987. At the 1999 Helsinki summit, Turkey was officially recognized as an EU candidate country. Accession negotiations finally began in 2005, during a period of political and economic reform in Turkey. However, the talks soon stalled due to concerns over Turkey's human rights record, treatment of minorities, freedom of speech, and other core EU values. Out of 35 policy chapters for negotiations, only 16 have been opened so far, with just one closed. A major factor that disrupted Turkey's EU accession process was the rise of President Recep Tayyip Erdogan and his Justice and Development Party, AKP. Erdogan first served as prime minister in 2003 and initially continued democratic reforms. But over time, his government became increasingly authoritarian. After a failed coup attempt in 2016, Erdogan imposed a state of emergency and launched a mass crackdown on dissidents. This democratic backsliding raised alarms in Europe. The EU criticized measures like Erdogan's consolidation of executive power and jailing of journalists and academics. In 2017, the European Parliament advised suspending accession talks with Turkey. While no formal freeze has occurred, negotiations have basically stalled since 2016. The issue is that many of Erdogan's actions contradict core EU principles like freedom of expression. Turkey also continues to occupy northern Cyprus, further straining its bid. However, completely cutting off Turkey is difficult for the EU. Turkey still aligns with the West geopolitically and hosts millions of refugees from Syria's civil war. The EU relies on Turkey to prevent migration flows into Europe. This gives Erdogan leverage, and Turkey still has support from some EU members who want to maintain economic ties. But political tensions with Erdogan have hampered Turkey's accession prospects. Despite friction with the EU, Turkey has remained a vital NATO member. During the Cold War, it represented the alliance's southeastern bulwark against the Soviet Union. Today, Turkey's military capabilities and strategic location remain important to NATO. Turkey has the second-largest army in NATO with over 400,000 active troops. Its Incirlik air base hosts American nuclear weapons and has been used for operations in Iraq, Afghanistan and Syria. Turkey also controls access to the Black Sea through the Dardanelles and Bosporus Strait. Erdogan has sometimes tested NATO's patience, but Turkey enables power projection in the Middle East. Removing them would create a massive geographical gap, so NATO has treaded carefully. Turkey's veto over Sweden and Finland's bid to join NATO should be viewed in this context. While controversial, it shows Turkey's leverage in shaping alliance decision-making. So how could Sweden and Finland's upcoming inclusion in NATO affect Turkey's relationship with the alliance and its EU ambitions? Some experts believe it could give momentum to Turkey's EU bid by removing one of their main objections. Turkey often accused Europe of double standards for rejecting them, but not Nordic countries that also held neutral foreign policies. Bringing Sweden and Finland into NATO eliminates this grievance. Turkey could argue the EU should reciprocate by progressing with their accession process. Improving relations with the West to gain support for its Syrian operations is also in Turkey's interests. Some observers argue Erdogan could moderate his authoritarian behavior and restart democratic reforms to unlock EU talks. Others are more pessimistic. Even with Sweden in NATO, they expect the underlying tensions over Turkey's human rights record and Erdogan's authoritarianism to remain. There are fears Erdogan may become more assertive with his anti-Western rhetoric after strong-arming Sweden and Finland during the NATO negotiations. This could actually worsen Turkey's relations with EU leaders. Much depends on whether Turkey respects the terms of the agreement, which involved Sweden and Finland making certain concessions regarding Kurdish militants. If Turkey presses for more restrictions, it could heighten tensions. There are also concerns about increased arms sales to Turkey after the NATO expansion. Turkey already has a poor record with military exports being used against Kurdish groups. More weaponry risks further human rights violations. Overall, while Sweden and Finland's acceptance into NATO removes one obstacle for Turkey, significant hurdles for EU accession remain. There is deep ambivalence among EU states over Turkey's membership bid. Some are open, but others like France have outright called for ending accession talks. Even Turkey's historic supporter Germany has grown critical of Erdogan's government. Without a major shift in Turkey's politics, it seems unlikely its EU bid will advance substantially even after the NATO expansion. That said, keeping engagement open with Turkey remains strategically important for the EU. Turkey is too big and significant geopolitically to ignore or isolate. Managing the complex relationship will require adroit diplomacy from EU leaders going forward. It is a difficult balancing act, but maintaining dialogue channels with Turkey remains critical. The accession process, even if slow and lengthy, provides useful leverage for the EU to push for democratic reforms. It is a long-term play, but one that could pay dividends down the road. While Sweden and Finland's upcoming inclusion in NATO holds some symbolic value, Turkey still faces steep challenges in its pursuit of EU membership. Simply put, Turkey under Erdogan's leadership does not currently meet the EU's democratic requirements. Significant reforms would need to take place before accession talks can substantively move forward. However, Turkey remains too important geopolitically for Europe to isolate. Keeping Turkey oriented to the West is in both sides' interests. The EU should stay open to dialogue, but remain principled in pushing for adherence to core values. Only time will tell how Turkey's role in Europe evolves. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. And don't forget to like and subscribe to support the channel.